Story 1. He tried to change my drink order with the waitress because he thought I should have something more ladylike. I didn't make it through the first date, let alone a second. Story 2. He desperately tried to win his ex-girlfriend back at the bar where we were. She was the bartender. He chose the venue. I spent the night awkwardly sipping my drink and watching my date make a fool of himself. Story 3. My music taste was criticized, and while I understand that not everyone shares the same preferences, the intensity of his remarks about how terrible the music was surprising. I called my best friend in a panic, and she unexpectedly joined us on our date. After I dropped him off at home, we had a sleepover and watched horror movies. Story 4. One time I was asked on a date, but before I could go, the guy had a list of demands. My hair was pink, I had facial piercings, and I dressed very noticeably goth. We had even met at a gothic industrial night at a local nightclub. His demands included dyeing my hair a natural color, removing all piercings, and dressing more normally. He insisted that these changes had to be made in order for him to be seen in public with me. My immediate reaction, as a lonely young girl, was to consider giving in to his demands because I thought he must have been right. I even imagined that if we worked out, we would at least dress up and go dancing together at the local goth club. But then, it hit me just how foolish that was. I firmly told him no and asked why he bothered asking girls out that he met there if he wanted someone who wouldn't even fit in. I blocked him, realizing there wouldn't even be a first date. Story 5. It was my first and only date with a white guy, and he spent half the time making backhanded compliments, saying it's amazing I'm not like all the other people in my race. It was a bad experience, but at least I got a good dinner out of it. Story 6. At one point, he stopped responding to what I was saying and stared only at my chest with a glazed expression. No thanks. Story 7. He said my dog looked like a mop and wouldn't stop making fun of her because he doesn't like smaller dogs. Story 8. Here's my time to shine. I've been sitting on this story for nearly 20 years. In 5th grade, I was on a movie date with my girlfriend. She held her hand out so I would hold it, but being the preteen genius that I was, I put a coin in her hand instead. How I managed to reach 35 is beyond me. Story 9. For dinner, he drove us to his mom's house, opened the fridge, and asked if there was anything we could use to make something to eat. I called a cab and left. Story 10. We went to In-N-Out, and I asked him if I could send him money for half of the meal, as I always offer to split. He said, "You can just use your card if you want." Initially, I thought he was just offering to let me earn the credit card points and that he would send me money for half, but that wasn't the case. He simply thanked me for paying for his burger and fries. It was only about $9, but that kind of made it worse. Story 11. We both had Disneyland annual passes, so we decided to have our first date there. Even if things didn't click, we could still have a fun time, and it was a safe public place in case things went south. However, he proceeded to talk my ear off about wrestling the entire time. He hardly asked anything about me, he just talked about wrestling and how his ex used to watch his wrestling matches, and he wanted that in a partner. When we were on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, instead of enjoying the experience, he kept talking about wrestling. He was a nice enough guy, but our interests did not align, and I felt no desire to make another attempt at anything. Story 12. Guy was from a small town about an hour away from me. He wanted to meet at a bar, which was fine. His first comment was that me wearing jeans was a bold choice and that he preferred his women to dress like women. I ordered a beer that wasn't Budweiser or Miller, and he and the bartender made fun of me for being too uppity to drink normal beer. On paper, he seemed great, but meeting him in person, I knew he wanted a little lady to cook, take care of him, and look pretty. No thank you. Story 13. When I was living in Chicago, I went on a date with a girl from the South. She used a racial slur, but then reassured me it was okay because she was taking comedy classes. That was the moment I knew I was ready to leave. Story 14. A man told me he has severe anger issues that lead him to black out, sometimes for days. I never went on a second date because I didn't want to end up dead in a ditch. Story 15. He kept touching things in the art museum until I told him to stop. Then he continued to touch all the signs that said, "Do not touch," and giggled. We were both in our 20s. Story 16. Well, this one is on me. I am a drug addict and showed up under the influence. She called me out on it and left. Thankfully, I am going to rehab on Sunday. Story 17. I ordered pasta at an Italian restaurant, and he ordered a salad so he could get drunk quicker and cheaper later. Story 18. She was 22 and worked as a nurse. I was in college and attended a party at her friend's house. When I arrived, I found a group of guys using meth. I got through the night without trying it but thought to myself that maybe she wasn't the right girl for me. Story 19. He told me he was a purchaser at a local university and mentioned some interesting things he had been asked to provide, like swords. Okay, that was a fun conversation. But then he decided to tell me about buying a monkey for research, and I nervously tried to change the topic, saying, I hope that monkey is okay. If you were a person who didn't pick up on these cues, what would you naturally bring up next? Tiny mice. Guillotines. Yes, little guillotines for lab mice. That is not appropriate first date conversation. I am an animal lover, and that topic is never acceptable. He didn't seem to realize how clearly uncomfortable and upsetting the discussion was. Story 20. I have shared this story before. He spent the entire time we were at the restaurant talking about how much he liked owls. He mentioned that he lies on his bed every night and listens to videos of them with the lights off. Did you know they don't really hoot? They mostly screech. Then he demonstrated. Story 21. The date was amazing, we had chemistry, and everything pointed to a second date. But when I kissed her goodnight, it was like kissing a dumpster in the middle of summer. She must have had some kind of tooth infection because it tasted awful. Story 22. I took her to a wonderful local Italian restaurant for dinner. She tried to order a cheeseburger. Story 23. Less than an hour into our date, he asked me what kind of birth control I was using. The last girl he dated refused to take birth control, got pregnant, and decided to have an abortion. He didn't want that to happen again. Story 24. She was just too goody-goody and churchy for me in a judgmental way. That date didn't go well and we never talked again. It turned out to be the best thing ever because I met my current girlfriend not long after, and she is my rock. Story 25. He went on an unprompted rant about how much he hated gay people, calling them a waste of humanity. I had on my profile that I was a shadowcaster in our local Rocky Horror Picture Show group and shared a few pictures with castmates who were clearly part of the LGBTQ+ community. Honestly, most of my friends at that time were gay. I ended the date early and blocked him. This was around 2014 in a relatively friendly city, so that level of hate was shocking to me as a young adult. Story 26. Trying to have a conversation with her was difficult. She provided single-word answers, did not contribute, and never asked a single question. I learned nothing about her, despite my efforts to get to know her, and she never inquired about me. Why did you even agree to this date? Story 27. He was a complete fraud before that term even existed. He literally lied about his entire life. Story 28. Neither of us felt the connection. She even said so. I wasn't upset because I felt the same way and appreciated her honesty. Story 29. We were having dinner, and she was making snide remarks about everyone and everything. She criticized the other customers, the staff, the decor, and shared negative opinions about her coworkers. She even referred to her best friend in an inappropriate way. This was not the kind of person I wanted to know better. Story 30. He said he was glad I wasn't someone from J-Date. I'm Jewish. I told him, leading to a shocked expression. Then I went to pay for my own drink and left. Story 31. She arrived already drunk and wanted me to go with her to her ex-husband's house to pick up a dog. No, thank you. Story 32. He was negative about life and everything. He thought he was incredibly handsome but only encountered women who didn't consider him their type. Story 33. One dismissed climate change, while another had clearly consumed a significant amount of alcohol before the date and was noticeably intoxicated by the end. Story 34. For me, it was never a major red flag or a significant mistake. Usually, it was just a feeling of indifference, like not really liking someone. There was one girl who was very cute and seemed intelligent on our first date, but after that, I struggled to engage her in conversation. I think she was just looking for a casual encounter. I'm not sure, honestly. Then there was the Ukrainian woman who was quite clear about not being interested in a long-term relationship. And I was looking for something more serious, so that was that. Typically, it was more about the vibe check and just not feeling a connection. Story 35. He navigated his vehicle around a corner in downtown Houston, thinking it would impress me. I am a grown woman and not particularly impressed by my life being put in danger. Story 36. She started asking me if I wanted children just 5 minutes after I met her, stating that she didn't want any. I told her that at my age, I wasn't even thinking about children, and I didn't know what the future held. She stood up and said that the date could end because she categorically didn't want children. I understand that this is an important topic to discuss early in a relationship, but not after 5 minutes. Story 37. She didn't bring any money and just assumed I would pay since it was a double date with another couple. Her friend ended up paying for her. Story 38. I was in a drive-thru on an informal date with a girl who was really into me, and I thought she was nice enough to see if it could be something more. A song came on the radio, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what it was. However, she made the comment, "This is the way I want a man to love me," referencing the lyrics of the singer. That set the bar a bit high for me at that moment, and I was not willing to jump that high. I was more of a limbo kind of guy. After we got our food, we headed to a park where a couple of girls I knew, with whom I had no romantic relationship, came over and said hello. She then acted as if they were trying to kidnap me from her and threatened to beat them if they did not walk away. Thanks, but no thanks. Story 39. I was 42 and she was 35. Halfway through the date, she asked if I would like to take her virginity. I thought she was making a joke, so I laughed. She started crying, and for the rest of the date, which lasted only another 30 minutes, she tried to regain her composure. Story 40. She poured out all her life misery and started crying. That's acceptable after several dates when getting to know each other on a deeper level, but on the first date, not a great way to make a good impression. Story 41. He kept tapping my drink, encouraging me to drink almost after every sentence. He downplayed his friend's success, making it seem like he was better. Story 42. He asked me if I had acid reflux, immediately followed by, "Can I kiss you?" He then said he wasn't ready to kiss because he had to remove his Invisalign first. So he turned around, as we were on a sidewalk, to remove his braces and put them in his pocket. It was awkward. Story 43. 3 experiences immediately come to mind, but there have been others. There was a guy who admitted his real age during the first date. I don't understand why people lie about or hide this so much. I offered 3 options for a first date and he selected a bar. He showed up late and sweaty, then criticized drinking alcohol. Why didn't he choose the coffee option or dinner? He talked about how he spent his inheritance on a cocaine binge and now doesn't have money to fix his car or pay bills, which is why he walked to the date in the summer and arrived sweaty. There was a guy who criticized the cute local place I picked while we were there, then wanted to go to a chain restaurant instead. He then tried to get me to have sex in his car in the parking lot, saying, "It's fine, I have tinted windows." So I left. Story 44. He was Filipino. During dinner, his cultural background came up. He told me that he hated being Filipino, did not adhere to their cultural norms, and considered himself American. He felt ashamed of his background, disliked all his relatives, and viewed his heritage as a source of shame. He preferred to hang out with white people because he believed they understood him best. It became clear to me that there was nothing for me to say. I just listened and smiled. I tried not to look at the clock and did everything I could to avoid prolonging our date. I am a white-appearing Hispanic, and I have a male cousin who is just like the guy I dated, except he is Hispanic. Story 45. A girl wanted to go to the beach with me. Coming from her house, I decided we should drive separately since my house was closer on the way back. She insisted on bringing her 2-year-old son, which I was hesitant about but ultimately agreed to. That was until she started racing me on the highway, going 90 miles per hour and weaving through cars as she sped past. I met a friend at the beach, ignored her, and left. Story 46. I had a tricky situation. The guy seemed nice and I tried my best, but I felt like there were a couple of negative factors at play. It was the first time I went out with a Jewish man a few months ago. He lost almost all of his family in the Holocaust, which is horrible. I felt that some aspects of being half German made the situation awkward. I understood that he wouldn't accept it in the long run. He mentioned he would never travel to Germany, which I get. I don't blame him. However, he expects me to go with him to Israel. I wouldn't mind traveling there one day, but why should it only be about what he wants? Can you imagine if we had children and all of the conflict that could unfold? A fight might break out because I would want to take them to visit family in Germany. I eat a lot of pork, so I probably can't give it to my children. It's a slippery slope. Imagine the arguments. How easy would it be for me to hear the worst insults? I already have experience with this, having grown up seeing neighbors who had conflicts within their families due to the Armenian genocide, with one side being Armenian and the other Turkish. They clashed a lot, so I can only imagine. I'm not saying I wouldn't give another Jewish man a chance. It would really depend on who he is. I feel like the one I went out with was very conservative, while my style is very different. He seemed happy that I'm not blonde and tried to imply everything should work out by making me seem less German than I am. I was left speechless. I am in tune with everything. Music, food, and I still have contact with my family in Berlin. I travel there when I get the chance. Story 47. She asked me if I enjoyed things like Star Wars and said it was a warning sign. I paid for that dinner and moved on. Story 48. A guy told me that because I enjoyed cartoons I was childish and needed to grow up. I had my own place, my own car, paid my own bills, and had a degree. He kept trying to invite himself into my place when he dropped me off. I blocked him immediately after the door closed. Story 49. I had a nice dinner and then took her to a small Irish bar near our workplace. Some of her coworkers finished their shifts, came in, said hello, and then asked us if we wanted to use cocaine in the restroom. I declined. She accepted, and I settled the bill and left before they returned. Story 50. We went to the diner. He got a water and I ordered a mudslide. He looked at me with the utmost disgust and said, "Aren't you about to drive?" It was my first and only drink, and he knew I lived just 5 minutes away. His implication that I couldn't handle drinking in public was so bizarre. Story 51. She plainly ran to her car. I mean, she was no prize. It wasn't really going to go anywhere, but I was still offended. Story 52. She arrived looking like she had just rolled out of bed. Her lack of effort made me feel that she was not interested. Story 53. She spent more time on her phone than being present. She was a nice girl, but she had a serious addiction and was trying drugs the entire date. Story 54. I started masturbating under the restaurant table. She noticed what I was doing right as I was ejaculating in my slacks. She made a scene, embarrassed me, and loudly announced to the whole restaurant what I had done before storming out, leaving everyone in silence and staring at me. I had to awkwardly get up and pay the bill while everyone saw the stain on my pants. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.